Thank you very much, first of all. Thank you for coming, or rather staying. With us today is Sawsan Chebli, and she's not only also the State Secretary for Civic Engagement and International Affairs at the State of Berlin, but also one of the most visible figures in German politics on social media, and even more, a super fearless woman. Obviously, I followed what you've done mostly on Twitter the last years, and if there's a person in the German public realm that engages in every conversation and has drawn lots of positive and negative reactions, it's probably you. And I would like to start at the beginning. You know, how did this all start? When did you decide, I want to go into politics, I want to make my voice heard?
Thank you, first of all, for having me here. I feel very privileged to have the chance to talk about all these issues that to me are very emotional, and yeah, they impact my life in a way, and have always impacted my life. Like, I was born as the 12th child out of 13 to a Palestinian refugee family. My parents, my father and my mother, had to flee Palestine 48, where they fled actually with their parents then to the refugee camps in Lebanon, where they stayed 20 years with my 11 sisters and brothers, and then fled to Berlin again, where we were stateless for 15 years. I was born in 1978 in Berlin as the 12th child. And all these steps in their lives, fleeing Palestine, staying in refugee camps, fleeing then again to Berlin, being stateless for so many years. That has always been a reaction of political decisions. And my parents never had a chance to basically do anything about it. And I was very young when I decided that I will never keep silent on others deciding upon my life. I want to do something about it. I want to have my destiny in my own hands. Of course, as a state secretary, I'm a little bit too small to change the whole thing about refugee status of others or anything like that, but I have a voice and I want to use it. And that's very important. So I decided to be a member of the Social Democratic Party when I was 21, and decided to study political science, and now I'm here.
Do you remember the very first day, like the very first time you made your voice heard? Like maybe in school or something like that? When was the,
Yeah, it started in school. I was a speaker of, Schulsprecherin of the school. So it started very early that I got involved in, I interfered when someone was treated, in my opinion, badly or so. So it's always been something that was inside of me, like not being silent, not closing the eyes in front of injustice.
Which is, as many people know, not always popular. Did you ever get maybe used to negative reactions and even hate, or is it something that still bothers you till today?
Well, things got different. I mean, I was spokesperson to the German Federal Foreign Minister from 2004 to 2006. I was visible, but I was never confronted with the hate that I've been confronted these days. So the moment that I got state secretary and the moment that I was visible, like really visible in the first row, and speaking up and raising my voice against hate and against right-wing populism and right extremism and all the haters, I'm experiencing lots of hate and also threats. I was not on Twitter. I was not on social media. I basically only started 2 years ago when I became state secretary, because I needed a platform to get engaged with others and to raise my voice. You need a platform. So, and the moment I became state secretary, I was appointed, the moment I started to be engaged in all these debates, that was like the moment that for the right wing, I became the most hated because I stand for everything that they think is not supposed to be reality, like a Muslim, Palestinian, immigrant, German woman practicing, talking openly about Islam, defending women wearing headscarf, despite of the fact that I don't wear a headscarf. All of this should not exist, and so I became an enemy to them, in a way.
Have you found a kind of a strategy for yourself to deal with it, to let it go?
Well, the first shitstorm was very hard. It was very difficult
to...
Do
you remember what it was about?
Yeah, it was about a Facebook post that I did on a sexist incident that happened to me. I never got interfered with all these sexism debates before. I never wanted to, actually. But then something happened, and I don't know. I thought that it's very important to speak about it, to help other women to speak about it. And I posted something on Facebook. And it was so bad, because I've never thought that all of this would happen because of a Facebook post, because of me saying that I experienced sexism. And the reactions were so racist. So all of it was there all of a sudden. And I needed a strong backing of my family to survive in a way. So I think that was one of the first shitstorms I experienced, and I don't know how many happened after. In a way, I got used to it because it will go away in a way. After 2 weeks, everybody's talked about it, everybody's tweeted about it, and then that's it. So. But it's very good to have people behind you, to have a family that backs you. Yeah.
Nevertheless, you got into some troubles with the platforms themselves. At one point,
Yeah.
Twitter blocked your profile. On another incident, you deactivated your Facebook profile because you felt you were not properly protected anymore.
Yeah.
Maybe you can explain what it was about and how it felt for you, first of all, and secondly, what did you learn in the whole process about these big communications platforms that most of us use, but you hardly see the inner workings of them and how they actually work and what they do about the hate and about the way we communicate?
I learned a lot in the last 2 years. When I deactivated my Facebook account, I thought it was Sunday morning, and I just scrolled down all the posts and reactions. I don't know what was the real trigger. I don't remember even, but I thought that it's getting too much. Facebook was not deleting anything. They were not reacting to any of my complaints, and my account started to be a platform for Islamists, anti-Semites, racists, sexists, whatever, and everything was there, and I couldn't monitor it, because I use Facebook and Twitter. I used Facebook and I use Twitter privately, so I don't have a team monitoring all of this, and I had the feeling that it had a great impact, not on me emotionally, but also I was getting too many threats, and I thought, I was afraid a little bit that someone could feel triggered, or it could trigger someone to really do something. And I thought that if Facebook is not reacting, I have to deactivate it. And I decided to deactivate it. And Facebook never got in touch with me. That was very surprising because I'm very active on Twitter as a German politician, and everybody knows that. But they don't really. There was one comment, I guess, of Facebook. And then Twitter was totally different. Twitter blocked my account for a tweet that was so, there was nothing criminal about it. It was a normal tweet. I was just commenting on the name Mohammed. I was just saying that we will do our utmost that this name Mohammed will always be there because of AfD, the right-wing party in Germany, used it to enforce a campaign against Muslims. And I said, me and my family, we will do everything to protect this name and to make it never disappear in Germany, because my father's name is Mohammed, my second name is Mohammed, my nephew's name is Mohammed, etc. And Twitter decided to block my account. And then, you sit there and your account is blocked and they tell you have the opportunity to delete your tweet, and I didn't want to delete it because I thought there's nothing wrong about it. And you get only these automatic responses from Twitter from someone sitting I don't know where, and I felt really alone. I felt not being protected, not being heard, and then a campaign started on Twitter, people protecting me and speaking out in favor of me. And after a day or so, Twitter deblocked my account again, and then I got in touch with them in Berlin. And it took me a while to know who's Twitter in Germany, who's responsible for all of this. And then I met a lady. She's very nice, she's very competent, but she's alone. They even don't have an office, a normal office in Germany. I mean, it's something that I never thought would be possible. Like Twitter, you think that they have, of course, lots of people in Germany and other states working for them, monitoring and anything. No, nobody. And she's alone. They're thinking, I guess, of having someone else to help her. But all of this I learned, and I realized that it's very difficult to take responsibility for all the hate that is spread on these platforms with so little resources that they put into it. It's crazy. And whenever I make a complaint on Twitter, I've never been successful, even though it's very, it's illegal, I would say, what's on my platform on Twitter.
Do you feel like it's the obligation of maybe society or politics to engage in these fields of communication, to step up for these, I guess, failures of the platforms themselves?
Well, yes, the legal part is very important, like the accountability of these social media platforms. There is laws that have to be followed. Social media platforms do not act in a vacuum, so this is one side of it. But what I found very important is in my engagement, because sometimes you really feel not alone, but in a way you feel very vulnerable. And what I found very important is to spread positive messages. We only run after all these right-wing negative debates, and they set the agenda and we follow. We're only reacting. What I would wish for is that we're much better in spreading positive stories, positive messages, and supporting all of these people who are confronted with the hate. Like the murder of Walter Lübcke, a politician in Germany, shows perfectly that words follow concrete actions, in this case, murder. And he was very engaged in supporting refugees and defending refugees' rights, what I do and many others do as well. So what we need is to have many more people raising their voice on these platforms. My family tells me you have to get out of it because they're afraid, right? They don't know, someone I don't know, something could happen. But we need positive messaging. We need support for all these who are confronted with hatred. We need to build stronger alliances. What the right-wing extremists and the Nazis and all right-wing populism does is they build perfect alliances throughout, not only in Germany but also in Europe, and they have a very structural, very organized way of doing things. But what do we do as Democrats? I don't see that we're that strong in confronting their hate.
So what's your answer? It's building alliances, finding people who support your cause. It's spreading positive messages.
Yeah. Oh, well, this is a lot already. We don't have, I mean, I speak of love speech, you've probably heard of it. There is a campaign supporting it. It's very, I mean, what gives me the strength to continue and to not give up being active on Twitter is the positive reactions that I get. People telling me, please stay, and we need your voice. And when I see that, I encourage others to be on stage and to raise their voices and to not remain silent. This is something that politicians seek for, and it's very important. It's even as important as the legal part of it. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, that I would think is what we need to do a lot more.
It's interesting because in preparation of our conversation, I thought about the idea of freedom of speech, and mostly in the public debate, it's like loud, radical positions. The question is if loud, radical positions have a place in the discussion, but it's to a much lesser extent the question of fragile and vulnerable positions, if they have a position in the debate as well, because the one thing needs little legislation and a positive freedom, the other, to enforce vulnerable positions, you need more legislations and more security.
Yeah.
There's a kind of a trade-off between the two of them. Either you get the loud, radical voices, or you get the vulnerable, maybe endangered voices. Do you think that's true?
As someone whose parents come from the Middle East, one region where freedom of speech is restricted massively by the governments, I am a great defender of freedom of speech. I'm so thankful to live in a country where freedom of speech is respected as it is in Germany. But freedom of speech also has limits. And when you start insulting, not only insulting, when you have criminal content on the other hand, there has to be accountability, and this has to stop. Because as I said, at the end of the day, it could trigger and it could lead to violence if people think that crossing the red lines is something that is normal, right? If you, Walter Lübcke is the perfect example of where the limits of freedom of speech start. And it's also, of course, our authorities, like the police and the national intelligence that has to be much better in tracking the right-wing movements on the internet. It's very, very important. It's not only the social media platforms, it's us also. But yeah, I would say, on the one hand, freedom of speech, protecting freedom of speech, but on the other hand, we saw the discussions about the Network Enforcement Act, Netzwerkdurchsetzungsgesetz. Everybody was criticizing a potential overblocking. We don't have an overblocking. It never happened. It's still that illegal content is not deleted, and platforms do not react as they should.
We have a couple of questions via Slido here, and there are several I think are quite interesting. One of them is, do you have a proposal for solutions against hate speech without establishing censorship infrastructure? Because I think the background of the question is you never know what powers will come into parliament and into government, and if you introduce a certain infrastructure, it makes platforms vulnerable. So where's the trade-off between controlling and losing the liberty? Do you have any idea about this?
I think but with the Netzwerkdurchsetzungsgesetz, I think this is one way, it was one step in the right direction. I was criticized immensely by the Twitter community when I defended Heiko Maas with this Network Enforcement Act. But I think it's very important, and also the latest step taken by Twitter, that they have, how do you call it, that they, if you have a tweet, before it was kept because it was in public interest, and now it's marked, and everybody who wants to see the tweet, also Trump, it will have an impact probably on many of his tweets. So it's marked, and you have before seeing this tweet, you see that there is sensitive stuff. So these are probably actions and also steps that we need in order to have freedom of speech 100% guaranteed, but on the other hand, protect those who are confronted with hate all the times.
We just talked about the limitations of freedom of speech, and it's obviously a very sensitive issue because it's personal for many, and it's hard to find an objective stance in it. And one of the questions we have here is, in regard to the boycott movement against Israel, if this is already, from your perspective, something that touches the issue of freedom of speech or not.
Well, there is a difference between anti-Semitism and freedom of speech, obviously. So I wouldn't call the whole BDS movement anti-Semitic, but many of their campaigns are anti-Semitic. And me, with my Palestinian background, for many of them, I'm a traitor because I talk to Israelis. And this could not be something that we can tolerate. I don't think if is it conclusion or the Erklärung, the declaration made by the German parliament was the right step. I think we need more engagement, of so many of us against anti-Semitism, against all those who spread hatred, and support these who stay for and seek and fight for peace between Israelis and Palestinians.
Mm-hmm. One of the other questions is that these corporations like Twitter and Facebook have become as the anonymous asker writes gods for what is right and wrong. Do you think we should put a high level of trust in their decisions, or should we rather try to, as a society and as a political entity like Germany, try to rather do it themselves than to trust?
Again, I didn't get the question.
It's the second question here. It's the how can we continue to exercise our freedom of speech? No.
You see?
They're changing, sorry. Now it's the second one, the one beyond the red one. We have allowed corporations to become the gods of what is right and wrong. What would be your solution, and who has the power to make it happen?
I tried to explain that in a way. It's many things that you have to have, that you have to change, or that we need in order to control it a little bit. We have to have a state making sure that social media platforms are held accountable for the content that is spread on their platforms. And until now, I would say there is great room for improvement. Yes. There's still too much hatred, too much racism, too much sexism. And it's an existential question to our democracies also. All these social media platforms are either helping us to maintain our democracy or to stabilize democracies, but also a big threat to our democracies. And I think that is something that is not followed or on their agendas as much as it should be. And then each of us as a consumer is also responsible, right? By our behavior on these social media platforms. Do we use social media platforms for positive marketing, for positive agenda, for supporting others, for building alliances, for also spreading hate in a different way? Even we can spread hate against whomever. When you have only this black and white debates that we have on Twitter and other networks, it's very important to still try to have a differentiated, nuanced way of communicating. We all have a responsibility. The platforms, the state, the regulation, the authorities, and each of us.
Thank you very much. I think we have arrived now at a point where we're done with our time frame, I guess. Your next step is an Ask Me Anything, I think, downstairs. So there are a couple more questions which all look really, really good. And if you're really interested, you can join Sawsan downstairs in your next sessions. I don't really know the time when it is. But we still have the audience, so if you have one thing to ask from the people who engage in public debates and maybe follow you on Twitter, how they can, support the cause of the good, what's your wish?
First of all, follow me on Twitter. And second is, if you follow me, try to be positive and try to spread positive energy. It's very important because as soon as you are on my Twitter account, you'll see that there's a lot of hate. And even one wrote me a couple of weeks ago that he had to unfollow me because he was not able to bear all the hate that I am confronted with. Like he said, it's too much, I cannot. It made me feel bad. It was poison to my life. So yeah, you will see a lot of this hate, but just be positive. And then all of you who are engaged on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, we need to know that it's on us, like it's our responsibility to make something against this hate that is there and that is so much threatening our democracy, and support all of these people who are engaged, because it's not easy to be engaged in these days on social media.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Danke, es war super.
Thank you.